Chapter 51-25. Fengjiu followed behind him. The more she followed, the stranger she felt. Her father was walking towards the back of the mountain, towards the direction of the city. The terrain there was higher, and standing there, one could see the scenery of the city. However, this place was also rather remote. Even if people came to the back of the mountain, they would rarely come here. After all, if they wanted to see the scenery or something, they could go anywhere in the city. However, when she looked at the road in the back of the mountain, she could faintly see that someone had walked through it. Some of the weeds on the ground had been trampled, revealing a winding path. After walking for a while, she saw her father stop at a place that looked like a grave. Because he was blocking her view, she didn't see the name carved on the tombstone. She was just surprised. Why was there a grave in the back of the Feng family's mountain? Moreover, looking at the soil on the grave, it didn't look like a new grave. Who was buried here? Why didn't she know? Why did her father come here alone? She didn't hear her grandfather mention that there was a grave here. She felt more and more strange in her heart. She seemed to hear her father whispering something in front of her, so she tilted her head and listened carefully. Feng Xiao stood in front of the tombstone and looked at the weeds growing around the grave, as well as the fallen leaves on the tombstone. He whispered, "Gu-er, father has come to see you." As he spoke, he reached out and brushed away the fallen leaves on the tombstone. Then, he squatted down and took out 3 incense sticks from his space. He inserted them into the sticks and poured wine into the 3 wine cups. When Fengjiu, who was hiding behind and eavesdropping, heard this, her heart trembled. Her eyes narrowed and she looked at the grave with a shocked expression. At this moment, because her father was squatting down to pour wine, she just happened to see the name carved on the tombstone. The grave of his beloved daughter, Feng Qingge. Her heart trembled. For a moment, she stood there in a daze. Her eyes were filled with shock, astonishment, disbelief, and complicated emotions. Her father knew. So her father had known all along. Gu-er, it's been some time since Xiaojiu returned. Now that she's an expert who's ascended to the immortal realm, I don't think she'll be staying at home for long. This time, she's come back and told us a lot about her life outside. Feng Xiao said in a low voice. After pouring the wine, he sat down in front of the stone tablet. He stroked the name on the stone tablet with one hand and said, "It hasn't been easy for her all these years. All the things that she has experienced, no matter which one it is, are major events that shake the world, and those things are probably something that only she can do. Gu-er, although you're no longer here, seeing Xiaojiu is like seeing you. I've already lost a daughter, so I just want her to be well. Everyone in the family is doing well. You don't have to worry about your little uncle, Feng Yi." Xiaojiu said that she wanted to take him to the immortal realm to cultivate and broaden his horizons. Your mother. Fengjiu stood there without moving. She listened to her father talk about her in front of the tombstone. He talked about family matters as if he was just chatting about daily life. However, when she heard it, her heart was filled with endless bitterness. Since she was reborn into Feng Qingge's body, since she became a member of the Feng family, how many years has it been? She couldn't remember. Chapter 51-26. However, she had never said it because she was worried that they would not be able to take it. She did not know how to open her mouth. Perhaps she was more worried that they would treat her as a stranger after finding out the truth. And at this moment, when she saw this scene in the back of the mountain, she knew that she owed them an explanation. She took a deep breath and suppressed the rising and falling emotions in her heart. She looked at Feng Xiao, who was still talking, and called out, "Father." Feng Xiao could not help but be startled by the sudden call of father. He quickly turned around and saw the red figure walk out from behind the tree. His pupils constricted. "Xiaojiu. Why are you here?" He stood up and instinctively used his body to block the name on the stone tablet. Perhaps, in his heart, he didn't want to uncover the truth. Fengjiu walked forward step by step. Her gaze fell on the stone tablet as she asked softly, "When did father find out?" "Xiao Zhou." Feng Xiao looked at her, not knowing what to say. Fengjiu walked forward and came before the grave. She looked at the name on the stone tablet and said, "Father, don't you want to know what happened?" Her gaze moved away from the stone tablet and fell on Feng Xiao's face. She said, "In the end, I owe father an explanation." Feng Xiao looked at her and then looked at the stone tablet before finally saying, "Many years ago, I knew that you were not Gu Er. You were Xiao Zhou. Back then, that person told me that you possessed Gu Er's body." He paused, looked at the stone tablet, and said, "However, after going through so many things, I know that you truly treat us as family, and you truly protect us. You also treat yourself as a member of the Feng family, and you have never done anything to let down the Feng family or us. So, I believe that no matter what reason it was that made you my daughter, I also believe that you did not forcefully take over Gu Er's body." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. "Actually, for so many years, I wanted to tell you about this, but I didn't dare to." She looked at Feng Xiao and said, "Back then, Qingge was harmed by Su Ruoyun. Her face was disfigured, and she was even fed a deadly poison to erase her cultivation. She was sold to a brothel, wanting to torture her to death. Qingge resisted with all her might, but in the end, she still died. When I woke up, my soul had already fused with this body. I killed the person who harmed Song. When I sat in front of the mirror and looked at my ruined face, there was a remnant soul crying in my mind." Seeing his tightly clenched fists in his sleeves and his heaving chest, she sighed in her heart and said, "That remnant soul was Qingge. She told me that she was harmed by Su Ruoyun and wanted me to avenge her. She also said that she was worried about you and hoped that I would take good care of you on her behalf." I agreed, so her remnant soul fused with my memories. Thus, my memories contained her memories. From that moment on, I became her. Feng Xiao let out a deep breath. Hearing her speak in detail, he only felt his heart clench in pain. His daughter. She had died so helplessly. As a father, he had failed in his duty. If he had protected her, perhaps that would not have happened. Chapter 51:27. Feng Xiao shook his head and said, "Don't tell them. That's enough. I don't want them to feel the pain and self-blame I felt when I first found out." He looked at Fengjiu and patted her shoulder, saying, "Xiao Zhou, you're very good. Even though Gu is no longer here, you're still here. Your existence also proves Gu Er's existence. Even though you're two souls, you're still one person." He sighed softly and looked at the name on the stone tablet, saying, "That's good. I think Gu will be like me. She won't want her grandfather and mother to be sad for her." "Okay, I'll listen to father," Fengjiu softly replied. The father and daughter quietly stayed there for a while before leaving. She originally wanted to tell them about leaving, but because of this matter, she didn't say anything and returned to the courtyard. "What's wrong?" Xianyuan Mose asked when he saw her return. Her expression didn't seem right. He went forward and held her hand. He touched her forehead and asked, "Are you not feeling well?" Fengjiu leaned into his embrace and hugged his waist. She whispered in his arms, "So my father already knew that I wasn't Qingge, but Fengjiu." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose was slightly surprised and asked, "What did he say?" "He didn't say anything. He also didn't tell me about this. I saw him go to the back of the mountain alone, so I followed him. I found a grave in the back of the mountain. It was the grave he set up for Qingge. After asking, I found out that he already knew about this many years ago." She sighed softly and said, "So I told him how I became his daughter. I originally wanted to tell grandfather and mother, but father said not to tell them. He didn't want them to be sad." "Okay, that's enough," Xianyuan Mo said. He gently stroked her hair and said, "You've done enough for Chinga. You've done right by her, her family, and the Phone Clan. Perhaps it's the will of the heavens to let you become a member of the Phone Clan." Fengzhou didn't say anything. She just quietly hugged him and leaned into his embrace. She felt the warmth from his body and the sound of his heartbeat. After dinner, Feng Jiu told them about her preparations to leave. Although Feng Sanyuan and the others were reluctant to part with her, they also knew that she was now a great emperor, so she couldn't stay here for long. Thus, they only reminded her to be careful in everything she did, and to come back more often when she had time. The next morning, Fengzhou, Xianyuan Mose, and the others sat in a carriage and went to the Peach Blossom Cove. When they arrived at the transmission array in the Peach Blossom Forest, Fengzhou let Feng Yi, Du Fan, and the others go to the array to wait for her. Then she went to the side with Mose to talk. "I'll wait for you up there. The 3 children have been talking about you. After you ascend, we'll find some time to go and see them." Fengzhou held his hand and didn't want to let go. Xianyuan Mose looked at her. His deep black eyes were filled with tenderness and love. He reached out and pulled her into his embrace. He kissed her forehead and said in a low voice, "Okay, I'll go up to find you soon." He let go of her and looked at her, saying, "Don't worry about me. Go." "Okay." Fengzhou replied and looked at him deeply. Then she walked into the array and looked at him, saying, "Ah Zhe, I'll see you in the immortal realm." Chapter 51-28. Xianyuan Mose nodded and looked at Fengzhou without saying anything else. At this moment, it was useless to say anything. Everything could wait until he ascended. Fengzhou retracted her gaze and activated the matrix. A beam of light rose from the matrix under her feet. In an instant, they were wrapped in it. They turned into a beam of light that shot up into the sky and disappeared. Xianyuan Mose looked up and saw that the ray of light was inconspicuous in the sunlight. If one did not pay attention, it would be difficult to notice it. Seeing them leave, he turned around and left as well. Next, he had to prepare for his ascension. Upper Immortal Realm. During this period, a piece of news quietly spread in the Upper Immortal Realm. It was said that the Empress Phoenix Master had gone mad during her closed-door cultivation and had not stepped out of the Immortal Island for many years. Compared to the shocking things she had done when she first ascended, it was obvious that her closed-door cultivation in the past few years had caused a lot of speculation. Some people were even eager to make trouble. Among these people, the 3 great emperors who had a death feud with Fengzhou were the main ones. After observing and asking for information for a long time, the 3 of them arrived outside Fengzhou's Immortal Island. They looked at the barrier in front of them and the clouds that covered the scenery inside the barrier. The 3 of them looked at each other. Fengzhou has not come out for many years. Something must have happened. Since we can't find out why, let's go in and check it out today. If we can take the opportunity to kill her, it can be considered as resolving the knot in our hearts for many years. One of the great emperors said as he stared at the barrier in front of him. At this moment, he was still a little nervous. After all, the scene back then had shocked them so much that when they mentioned Fengzhou, they couldn't help but feel some fear in their hearts. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used recuperation as an excuse to hide from her for so many years. "I'll break this barrier," another great emperor said. He gestured for the 2 of them to step back. Then, he gathered a strong spiritual aura in his palm and attacked the barrier. At the same time, he shouted, "Break!" Bang! However, the airflow hit the barrier and made a loud noise. Not only did the barrier not break, but it also reflected the aura back. "Be careful." One of them whispered and dodged at the same time. When the great emperor who broke the barrier saw the airflow being reflected back, his eyes narrowed and he quickly dodged. "I didn't expect the barrier set up by Fengzhou to be so powerful," another great emperor said as he looked at the barrier in front of him with a complicated expression. They knew that she was a genius that was only once in a million years. If they were not worried that she would dominate this place and make them submit to her after she ascended, they would not have taken advantage of her ascension to take advantage of her ascension and make them submit to her. They would not take advantage of her ascension would. If she wasn't so powerful, she wouldn't have been able to kill the Northern Flame Emperor all those years ago. To the immortal, and still, she. And, to. Immortal, being. Her hearing this, the other two great emperors looked at him and asked, "Great Emperor of Dongyao, what do you mean?" The great emperor of Dongyao glanced at the two of them and said, "A few years ago, I used the last fragment of the divine incense to send an order to a future sovereign in the immortal world to unify the immortal world and destroy Fengzhou's family and relatives in the immortal world. I believe that after a few years, he should have done something." Chapter 51-29. I didn't expect the great emperor of Dongyao to have the invigorating incense. The two of them spoke in surprise. The invigorating incense was a rare item. They didn't expect him to have it. After thinking for a while, the two of them asked again, "Is there any movement now?" The remaining incense can only be sent to the lower immortal realm. As for how things are going down there, I don't know. I don't know yet, but the chances of success should be relatively high. He didn't tell them that he had helped the monarch of the lower immortal realm find the seed of the Black Lotus. The Black Lotus brand had become one. Naturally, his strength had increased greatly. Coupled with the origin umbrella he had left for his descendants, no matter how powerful Fengzhou's people were, they wouldn't be able to resist him. If that's the case, then it's really a joyous occasion. The descendants of the great emperor of Dongyao are so capable. Let us congratulate you first. The two of them laughed and looked at each other. Then, they brought the topic back to the barrier in front of them. This barrier is so powerful. I'm afraid it's difficult to break it with one person's strength. Why don't the three of us work together? How about we break it in one fell swoop? All right. While they were preparing to break the barrier, the contracted beasts inside the barrier heard the commotion and knew there was an enemy attack. The fire phoenix spread its wings and shouted to Lao Bai and the others, "Enemy attack. Master isn't here. We have to guard the immortal island." Okay. The beasts below responded and flew toward the mountain gate of the immortal island. At the same time, Songmi, who was cooking, heard the loud noise outside. She immediately picked up the kitchen knife and ran out. Is it an enemy attack? How many people are there? Tai Song was forging in the back mountain. He was preparing to refine weapons. When he heard the noise, he stopped and immediately picked up a sword beside him and was about to go out. What happened? Why is there a loud noise? I think I heard Er's voice. Yunyang hurriedly came out of the house and asked. Tai Song's expression was serious. It should be an enemy attack. And those who dare to come here are probably strong enemies. Master isn't here. I have to go out and take a look. He strode out and then flew up on his sword. I'll go too. Yunyang quickly followed. Bang! Rumble. An even louder sound than before rang out. At the same time, there was a rumbling sound, and a powerful airflow surged out. In front of the gate of the immortal island, the three great emperors stood at the edge of the boundary. Looking at the opening they had opened, their eyes sparkled. Even though he didn't show it on his face, he was shocked in his heart. Unexpectedly, even with the combined strength of the three of them, they only managed to break a hole in the barrier set up by Fengzhou. However, it was also because of this opening that the fog that blocked their vision also dissipated, allowing them to see the scene inside the immortal island. Even though they also had their own immortal islands, they couldn't help but feel their hearts tremble. They didn't expect that Fengzhou's fairy island would look like a fairyland at first glance. Clouds and mist swirled around it, and rainbows stretched across it. Hundreds of flowers bloomed, and red-crowned cranes danced in the clouds in the sky. With just a glance, they were shocked. However, what they didn't know was that when they broke a hole in the barrier, in the forest of the Immortal Island, where Fingzhou had set up the formation, a light flashed and a formation appeared on the ground. Fingzhou and the others also appeared in the formation. Chapter 51:30. As soon as she arrived here, she felt that someone had opened a hole in the boundary array, and the sound was still echoing in the sky. Did someone want to attack her house while she was away? The corners of her lips curled up slightly, and her beautiful face showed a wicked and charming sneer. Her indifferent voice carried a light smile as she said, "It seems that we came back at the right time. Did someone attack us while you were away?" Feng Yi asked excitedly. He rubbed his fists and looked like he was ready for a fight. Fengzhou glanced at him and said with a faint smile, "Are you itching for a fight?" "Hee, I just want to try my skills." Feng Yi couldn't help but smile when she looked at him. He was her little uncle, but when he saw her, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. "Coward! Then let's stay here and practice." Fengzhou looked at him and Zhao Yang and said, "You two stay in this forest for a while. When I'm done with my business, I'll arrange a place for you to go." "Okay." Zhao Yang nodded. "Aw. You don't want us to help?" Feng Ye's face was full of resentment. Fengzhou smiled, looked at him and said, "Do you think you can win? If you go out, you'll only be beaten. You'd better stay here first." As she said this, she looked at Du Fan and the others and said, "Come with me and have a look." "Yes." Everyone responded and left with her, leaving only Feng Yi and Zhao Yang in the forest. At the gate of the fairy island, Fire Phoenix was the leader. When it saw the three people, it said in an ancient voice with a murderous intent, "My master didn't look for you, but you delivered yourselves to his door." Just when they broke a hole in the boundary array, it also received a message from its master through divine sense. Knowing that its master had just returned, it was relieved. Fengzhou and the rest did not directly fly over from the sky. Instead, Du Fan and the rest followed behind them while she took the lead. When she saw that the three of them were still standing outside the enchantment of the island, her eyes flashed and she sent a message to the Fire Phoenix. "Fire Phoenix, lure the three of them into the Immortal Island." Hearing the voice in her mind, the Fire Phoenix rolled her eyes and came up with an idea. At this time, she saw Lao Bai and the other contracted beasts guarding the mountain gate. Not far away, Song Mi and the others were flying over on their swords. She turned to Song Mi and the others and shouted, "You all go back first. Just leave it to us." "How can that be? There's an enemy attacking us, so I have to put in some effort." Song Mi shouted. When she saw that there were only 3 people at the opening of the barrier, she couldn't help but be surprised. Only 3 people. Tai Song's expression was not as relaxed. He looked at the 3 and said to Song Mi, "These 3 are all great emperors. Each of them can shake the world." "Ah. Great emperors. I really couldn't tell." Song Mi blinked and stared at the 3 people. "No matter how I look at them, they don't look as strong as Master." "You're right." The Fire Phoenix glanced at her and said, "Since you don't want to leave, then retreat a little further to avoid being affected." As soon as it finished speaking, it stared at the 3 people outside the barrier. In the next moment, it pounced towards them. The 3 of them were cautious. Therefore, even though they had opened the opening in the barrier, they did not immediately go in. Instead, they pondered and sized up the situation. Chapter 51:31. They had broken a hole in the enchantment of the Celestial Island and caused such a huge commotion, but Fingzhou did not appear. Only these contracted beasts and a few weaker cultivators were here. It seemed like their guess was right. Something must have happened to Fingzhou, or perhaps he was not on the Celestial Island. Otherwise, he would not have been able to restrain himself and not appear after they had caused such a huge commotion. Just as they were deep in thought, they saw the fire phoenix charging towards them. They immediately spread out and attacked the fire phoenix together. This was Fengzhou's contracted beast. They had to kill it first to dampen Fengzhou's spirit. Whoosh! The fire phoenix screeched and spat out a ball of flames towards them. However, the three great emperors' attacks were fast and fierce. Even though it was an ancient divine beast, it was not strong enough to face the three of them alone. Swoosh! A gust of wind from his palm struck the phoenix's wings. The phoenix let out a cry and its body was sent flying back to the immortal island as if it was no match for Yi Qin. Ha 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 ha. Fengzhou's contracted beast is only so-so. One of the great emperors raised his head and laughed. Seeing that the fire phoenix was injured and unable to defeat them, he was delighted. Seeing that the fire phoenix was escaping into the celestial island, he immediately chased after it. Wait for me to kill this fire phoenix first. He raised his voice and shouted. His figure swept into the celestial island like the wind and chased after the fire phoenix. The fire phoenix's original intention was to lure the three of them into the celestial island. Now that only one of the three had entered, it immediately shouted at Lao Bai and Tun Yun below, "Run!" Lao Bai was a straightforward person. Seeing that the fire phoenix was injured, he leaped up and said, "Let me help you." Tun Yun stared at the fire phoenix's injured wing. With the flames around, it could not see how injured it was. However, it knew that the fire phoenix's fighting strength was not limited to this. It did not understand, but when it saw the fire phoenix escaping and shouting at them to run, it immediately shouted at the other contracted beasts beside it, "Run!" Seeing this scene, the two great emperors outside looked at each other and said, "Let's go in and take a look." Thus, the two of them entered the celestial island and chased after their contracted beasts. However, just as they came in and chased after their contract beasts, Fengzhou, who was in the dark, gathered spiritual power in her hands and formed a complicated seal in her hands. Then, she let out a clear shout. "Seal!" The moment Fengzhou spoke, the three great emperors who were chasing after the contracted beasts froze. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. They turned around abruptly. They saw that the small opening they'd opened up was closing at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the other hand, Fengzhou, who'd caused them to think that something had happened, was standing not too far away from them, and she was closing up the barrier of the island once more while dressed in red clothes. She wanted to catch them like a turtle in a jar. "Oh no! We've been tricked. Damn it! She wants to trap us here." The three great emperors cried out in alarm. Their expressions changed, and they almost instantly turned into rays of light and ran towards the enchantment that was gradually closing. They had a premonition that if they didn't escape now, they would probably die here today. Since you're here, don't leave. Chapter 51-32. The moment the boundary closed, the three figures slammed into the boundary at the same time. However, they couldn't get out and were bounced back. Due to their extreme speed, they were bounced dozens of meters away. Damn it! Seeing the sealed boundary, one of the great emperors cursed gloomily. Seeing that they couldn't leave, he stretched out his hand and a long sword appeared in his hand. He looked at Fengzhou and prepared for battle. The other two great emperors also looked at each other and said, "Since we can't leave, we can only fight. This battle has dragged on for long enough. Today, the three of us will join forces and kill Fengzhou. Otherwise, either she or we will die." The three of them knew that either Fengzhou or they would die today. Therefore, they could only give it their all in this battle. Not for anything else, but to survive. Fengzhou smirked and gestured to Songmi, and her contracted beasts, "All of you, back off a little." Seeing this, Tai Song and Yunyang retreated far away. Songmi also retreated. The contracted beasts looked at each other and retreated as well. At this moment, Du Fan and the others had also arrived nearby. Songmi, and the others couldn't help but look at them, sizing them up and feeling surprised. Du Fan glanced at the three of them. His master had mentioned them before. Knowing that they were on the same side, he nodded at them. Today is really a good day, Fengjiu said unhurriedly. As she spoke, the Qingfeng sword appeared in her hand. Looking at the three of them, her voice was cold and filled with killing intent. At least it saves me the trouble of finding all of you one by one. Fengjiu, aren't you too arrogant? The three of us are all great emperors. Do you really think you can kill the three of us by yourself? The great emperor of Dongyao bellowed as he stared at her. His eyes were filled with malice. Dongyao, the great emperor. Fengjiu glanced at him and sneered, I have something here that I want to show you. I believe you will find it familiar when you see it. Then, she called out, Lenghua. Yes. Lenghua walked out and raised his hand. An item flew out from his hand and spun. Hiss. The Chaos Umbrella. How can this be? This is impossible. Dongyao, the great emperor's eyes narrowed as if he had seen something shocking. He stared in disbelief at the spinning umbrella in the man's hand. This umbrella was a treasure that he left behind for his descendants before he ascended. How did it end up in Fengjiu's hands? Whoosh! However, just as he was in shock and disbelief, a biting cold sword qi suddenly struck out. The chilling sword qi that came from the Qingfeng sword in Fengjiu's hand was as fast as lightning and as fierce as the cold wind. With a swoosh, it streaked across the air and attacked Dongyao, great emperor. Be careful. A great emperor not far from Dongyao, the great emperor shouted. As Fengjiu was too powerful, the three of them had to join forces to gain the upper hand. Therefore, before they killed Fengjiu, the three of them were in the same boat. If one of them died first, it would be extremely disadvantageous to the remaining two. Therefore, when he saw Fengjiu's sword rushing towards Dongyao, the great emperor, while he was distracted by the umbrella, he quickly moved forward. Ah! Hiss! Chapter 51:33. Due to the piercing pain and the aura of death brought about by the sharp sword, the great emperor of Dongyao came back to his senses. He felt his body being pulled away. Due to this, Fengjiu's sword did not hit a fatal spot even though it had hit him. Do you want to die? The great emperor who had saved him shouted in a gloomy voice, she deliberately distracted you so that she could attack you. If I hadn't pulled you away, you would have died under her sword. Blood seeped out from the wound on his shoulder, which was only a fist's distance away from Li Xian's chest. At this moment, the wound was seeping with a chilling sword aura like an icy sharp blade drilling into the wound. It was bone-piercing and unbearable. The warm blood soaked a large part of the front of his shirt. The smell of blood filled his nose, but it calmed him down instead. He quickly sealed the wound to stop the bleeding. When he looked up, his cold eyes were glaring at Lenghua, who was holding the treasured umbrella. His eyes were overflowing with killing intent. What a pity. Fengjiu sighed softly. There was a hint of pity in his voice. It was a pity that the sword missed and could not take his life. Fengjiu, today, I'll show you my strength. The great emperor of Dongyao gritted his teeth and said in a gloomy voice. The treasured umbrella was in Fengjiu's hands. Needless to say, the descendants of the family in the lower immortal realm must have been wiped out. His monstrous anger turned into a strong battle intent at this moment. He held the long sword in his hand and leaped into the air. The sword that contained a powerful sword aura viciously slashed down at Fengjiu from the sky. Die! The powerful sword aura formed a terrifying airflow and pressure in the air. Even Songmi, and the others who were relatively far away could feel the oppressive and terrifying aura. The wind in the air seemed to have condensed on the sword. With a whoosh, it slashed down at Fengzhou with a thunderous and destructive aura. At the same time, the other two great emperors also moved. They rose into the air and stood in 3 different directions, forming a triangle that trapped Fengzhou in the middle. Their palms contained powerful wind and air currents, and at that moment, they also attacked Fengzhou, who was in the middle. They thought that even if she could dodge one of their attacks, one of the other two would definitely be able to kill her. At the very least, even if he couldn't kill her, he could at least severely injure her. However, just as the 3 of them were attacking Fengzhou from 3 different directions, Fengzhou moved with the Qingfeng sword in his hand. When the attacks from the 3 sides landed, the red figure flashed towards one of them like a bolt of lightning. The red figure flashed through the sword shadows and palm winds. The speed was so fast that they could only see the red figure, as well as the killing intent and the aura of death that the red figure brought. The Qingfeng sword drinks blood. The cold voice with a bloodthirsty aura sounded like a voice from hell. At the same time, the great emperor of Dong Yao's sword slashed down at the place where Fengzhou was originally standing. At the same time, a huge palm print also fell at that moment, creating loud bangs. Swoosh! Bang bang bang! Swoosh! Chapter 51-34. The sword chi landed on the ground and sliced it open like tofu. With a loud bang, a crack as wide as a person appeared on the ground. Dust flew up and filled the air. At the same time, an unwilling and horrified scream was heard. Ah! Amidst the dust, a great emperor who was standing in the air widened his eyes in shock and horror. His body stiffened as blood seeped out from his forehead. Not far behind him, Fengzhou was holding the green-tipped sword with the blade pointed downwards. She was in a slashing posture. At that moment, as she raised the sword in her hand, the body of the great emperor, who had been standing stiffly in mid-air, suddenly exploded. Bang! Surging sword chi burst out from his body and sliced him into pieces. At that moment, as the sword chi burst out, flesh and blood splattered all over the ground. Dead, dead. The great emperor of Dong Yao and the other great emperor widened their eyes in disbelief. A great emperor was killed with a single slash. Did they see wrongly? The scene in front of them was bloody and tragic. Just like that, it exploded in front of them. Some of the flesh and blood splattered on their faces along with the airflow. They felt as if the flesh and blood that splattered on their faces were burned by flames. The scorching heat made them panic. Why? Why was it so easy for Fengzhou to kill a great emperor like she was cutting a piece of tofu? A great emperor who had an unparalleled lifespan and was powerful enough to shock countless sovereigns was killed with a single slash. They had heard many rumors about Fengzhou's terror. They had also heard many rumors about her, especially about the death of the great emperor of Beiyan. At that time, they even wondered if the great emperor of Beiyan's combat strength had weakened. Otherwise, how could he not be able to defeat Fengzhou who had just ascended? However, at this moment, when they faced Fengzhou personally, they realized how terrifying Fengzhou was. At this moment, they didn't know and didn't see that when Fengzhou killed the great emperor with a single slash, almost all the experts felt it. Due to the great emperor's death, the land he controlled shook violently. The sovereigns and great emperors from other regions were shocked by the disappearance of the divine souls scattered across the land. Why did another great emperor die all of a sudden? On Fengzhou's deity island, the Qingfeng sword in Fengzhou's hand was dripping with blood. At the tip of the sword, a drop of blood was condensed and didn't fall to the ground for a long time. She stood in the wind in her red clothes and exuded a powerful aura. She stared coldly at the two great emperors and spoke unhurriedly. Who's next? The two great emperors calmed themselves down and pursed their lips. They stared at her with a serious expression. The two of them suppressed their fluctuating emotions and didn't dare to be careless. At this moment, they used 100% of their combat strength to deal with Fengzhou. The next one to die will definitely be you, Fengzhou. A sinister voice filled with murderous intent sounded. Two figures charged towards Fengzhou with monstrous aura and terrifying killing intent. Chapter 51:35. As he muttered to himself, the sky in the distance suddenly darkened, as if something was shaking. He sat on the mountain peak and looked at the shaking sky in the distance. His heart skipped a beat. It seemed that more than one great emperor had died today. He wondered how many would die by the end of this battle. On the Shao family's island, a roaring sky Grand Emperor felt the turbulence and the fall of a Grand Emperor. He couldn't help but come out of seclusion in advance. He stood at the top of a mountain and looked into the distance. They were all great emperors from the upper immortal world. Even though the battle between the great emperors was taking place in different regions, they could still sense it with their powerful divine souls. The death of a great emperor was no small matter. It was also extremely rare. After all, there were countless sovereigns in the upper immortal realm, but there were only a dozen or so great emperors. These great emperors had a long lifespan and powerful strength since the day they ascended. As long as they were not killed, they would live as long as the heavens and earth and enjoy the worship of thousands of generations. Moreover, even though there were differences in strength between great emperors, no one would kill another great emperor. Therefore, the death of a great emperor was an extremely shocking matter in the upper immortal world. Could it be that Empress Phoenix Master again? Roaring Sky Emperor stroked his beard, his heart skipping a beat. Speaking of which, nothing major had happened in the upper immortal world for thousands of years, let alone the death of a great emperor. However, ever since Empress Phoenix Master ascended, the upper immortal world seemed to be filled with a murderous aura. The death of great Emperor Bai Yan had alarmed many great emperors who had been living in seclusion. The person who killed him was none other than Fengzhou, who had just ascended. Now that another great emperor had died, it seemed to be Fengzhou's doing. Even though she had never met or fought with him, she knew from the great emperor she had killed that this person's strength was unfathomable. He was so powerful that it was terrifying. He stroked his beard and stared at the sky in deep thought. He muttered, "I heard that Empress Fengzhou has a pair of twins. If we can become in-laws with such a powerful great emperor, it will only be good for our Shao family." Thinking of this, he prepared to return to the palace and ask around to find out how old Fengzhou's twins were. Unexpectedly, before he could leave, he saw another wave of turbulence in the sky. His eyes narrowed, and even someone as calm as him couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air at this moment. Hiss! There are 3 great emperors today. 3 great emperors died. Great emperors who died at Fengzhou's hands. His eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at the sky in the distance. Everything seemed to have returned to normal after the turbulence. Even his great emperor's divine consciousness could no longer detect the aura and fluctuations of battle. "It's over," he murmured to himself. 3 great emperors, plus the Northern Flame great emperor from a few years ago, that's a total of 4 great emperors. Rumor has it that when Fengzhou ascended, there were 4 great emperors who tried to stop her and kill her. Could it be that the ones who died today are the remaining 3? For a moment, his mind was spinning rapidly, and the idea of marrying Fengzhou became stronger and stronger. He could only befriend such an expert, not make him an enemy. Chapter 51:36. At the same time, on Fengzhou's island, a red-robed Fengzhou stood against the wind. She watched as great Emperor Dong Yao was reduced to ashes in the raging flames and dissipated from the world. Her cool eyes swept across the chaotic aftermath of the battle, as well as the ground that had been split open. Thus, she put away the azure-edged sword in her hand and condensed a pure spiritual aura in her hands. With a clear shout, she scattered the spiritual aura in her hands to the surroundings. The ground that had been split open by the sword chi rumbled as it mended and returned to its original state. The trees and pavilions that had been chopped down were also being repaired by her immortal power. In the air, the 3 great emperors' auras disappeared without a trace, and the celestial scene formed by Fengzhou's celestial power reappeared as if the previous battle had never happened. Du Fan and the others' eyes lit up when they saw this. They knew that this was the ability of a great emperor after ascending. As for them, although they were talented, it was unlikely that they'd ascend to become a great emperor like their mistress. Hui Lang looked at her with admiration and exclaimed excitedly, "You killed 3 great emperors in a row. You're truly my mistress." "Mistress has always been very powerful," Ling Hua said warmly. "She's even more powerful after ascending." Du Fan smiled. "She killed 3 great emperors in a row. Looks like we came at the right time." "It's a pity that Qi Kong and the others didn't get to see this battle," Ying Yi said. He felt that it was all thanks to his mistress that he was able to come here with his mistress. "Ling Shuang. I missed you so much." Seeing that the crisis had been averted, Lao Bai pounced on Ling Shuang. When Ling Shuang saw it approaching, she raised her hand to cover her face, only to see white licking her palm. She could not help but reveal a helpless expression. "Wait, be serious." "I've always been very serious. You can ask them if you don't believe me." Lao Bai turned to look at Tun Yun and the others. Tun Yun and the other contracted beasts looked away speechlessly. Song Mi, Tai Song, and Yunyang saw that their contracted beasts were familiar with them and couldn't help but walk forward. Fengzhou descended from the sky. Seeing that the surroundings had returned to normal, he slowly walked toward them. "Introduce yourselves." "All right, I'll go first." Du Fan smiled and waved his fan. "I'm Du Fan. You must be Song Mi, Tai Song, and Yunyang. I've heard my mistress mention you 3. We'll be companions from now on." Hearing that he could name the 3 of them, the 3 of them were slightly surprised. Then, they saw the 3 of them reporting their names one after another. "I'm Ling Hua. Ling Shuang. My name is Grey Wolf. Your mistress is my mistress." Grey Wolf grinned. "Ing." Du Fan smiled and looked at them. "There are 2 more people in the forest. One is Feng Yi, the other is Xiao Yang. You'll probably see them later. Tai Song, this is my wife, Yunyang." Tai Song cupped his hands. "I'm Song Mi, I didn't expect my mistress to mention us. I've also heard her mention you 3. She said that you're the most capable people around her." Song Mi said with a smile. "Now that you're here, it'll be lively. Let's go. We'll talk in the hall." Fengzhou walked inside and motioned for them to follow. Chapter 51-37. Compared to the tranquility of the immortal island, after the great emperors of the 3 territories were killed, the territories under their control were plunged into panic and chaos. They were worried that they would be affected. They wondered when the Empress and the Phoenix Master would take charge of their territories. At the same time, some of the great emperors fell into silence and deep thought. Even the great emperors who had lived in seclusion began to have ideas. While Fengzhou and the others were discussing the next step in the palace, Feng Yi and Zhao Yang were running around in the forest, being chased by ferocious beasts. Why are there divine beasts again? Why are there so many ferocious beasts of the divine beasts level here? Moreover, there are so many of them surrounding us. They are trying to kill us. As he ran, he shouted. Every time he looked back and saw the ferocious beast following behind him, his already tired body would burst out with latent energy. He knew that if they were caught, they would be severely injured even if they didn't die. Zhao Yang was not in a better state. His robe was torn and there were a few bloodstains on his body. They didn't expect these ferocious beasts to be so cruel. Moreover, it was a group of divine beasts that chased after them. With their strength, they naturally couldn't deal with a group of ferocious beasts. At this moment, they finally understood why the young mistress had thrown them into the forest to train. In the palace, Fengjiu was making arrangements for Du Fan and the others. Today, we killed 3 great emperors. The territories under their control will be ruled and recovered by us. You guys will be in charge of taking over and guarding the 3 territories. Fengjiu looked at them and said, Hui Lang and Ning Yi will go to the territory of the Sovereign of East Glory. Du Fan and Lang Hua will take over the remaining 2 territories. You guys are new here and not familiar with the situation. I will call some sovereigns over for you to dispatch. When they heard this, they looked at each other and stood up in unison. Yes. Give me your communication jades, Fengjiu said. They immediately took out communication jades from the space and handed them to her. After receiving them, she brushed her hand over the communication jades and handed them back to them. I'll leave everything to you. If there's anything you can't solve, just send me a message. Okay, they replied and took back their communication jades. Take these 3 great emperor's seals. Fengjiu handed the great emperor's seal that he had obtained from Dong Yao great emperor and the others to the 3 of them. As the 3 great emperors were already dead, the name on the great emperor's seal was the name of Fengjiu's Empress Phoenix Master. When Tai Song, Yun Yang, and Song Mi saw this scene, they did not say anything. However, they were slightly surprised in their hearts. They did not expect their master to hand over such an important task to them. Moreover, he even called over the sovereigns to listen to their orders. They did not need to inform their master of their decisions. With such trust and authority, they could see that their master held a much higher position in their master's heart. Originally, they thought that since they were all the people around their master, it should be the same. However, at this moment, the 3 of them clearly realized that even if they were all the people around their master, their ranks should be higher than theirs. Don't worry, master. We know what to do, Du Fan and Lang Hua replied. Chapter 51:38. The next morning, the 12 sovereigns came to the deity island under Fengjiu's orders. In the main hall, the Phoenix Master sat on the main seat with Lang Shuang standing beside her. Du Fan, Lang Hua, and Hui Lang Ning Yi were all seated. After the 12 sovereigns entered, they glanced at the people in the main hall and went forward to kneel before Fengjiu. Greetings, Phoenix Master. The 12 of them said in unison. The news of Fengjiu killing 3 great emperors in one day had spread and they all knew about it. They respected her from the bottom of their hearts. Rise. Fengjiu said slowly. After taking a sip of tea, she looked at the 12 of them and said unhurriedly, I believe all of you have received the news of the deaths of the 3 great emperors of Dong Yao. Yes, we received the news yesterday. The news has already spread outside. One of them said. I called all of you here today because of this. She used the teacup to scrape the tea and took another sip. Then, she put down the teacup in her hand and looked at them. Please give us your orders, Phoenix Master. We will follow your orders, the 12 of them said hurriedly. They guessed in their hearts. Could it be that she wanted them to take charge of the 3 territories? Thinking of this, they couldn't help but feel excited. Now that the great emperors of the 3 territories have fallen, there will be chaos. Some people will take advantage of the chaos and cause trouble. Today, I called all of you here to instruct you. The 12 of you will form groups of 4 and follow the others. Assist them and follow their orders. As she spoke, Fengjiu looked at Du Fan and the others who were seated below. At this moment, Du Fan smiled and fanned his chest gently with the fan in his hand. He looked at them and said, My name is Du Fan. You can call me young Master Du. As he spoke, he walked in front of the 12 of them and asked, Which 4 of you want to follow me? Hearing these words, the 12 people couldn't help but be stunned. They looked at the people in front of them with some astonishment. In their opinion, the strength of these people couldn't be considered strong. In fact, some of them were even weaker than them. But to make them listen to their orders. Did they hear wrongly? No one volunteered. Du Fan smiled, as if he was not surprised. He glanced at them and said to Fingzhou, Master, since they have no one to choose, then I will decide. I want the first 4. Fingzhou looked at him with a smile and nodded lightly. Yes. Those who were too weak were not allowed to take over those territories. The 12 sovereigns who were considered to be above average among the sovereigns were naturally subservient to the strong. Although she had given the order, Du Fan and the others would probably have to put in a lot of effort to mobilize them. However, the people she had groomed were still capable of this. Hence, she was not worried that they would not be able to subdue these sovereigns. In response, the 4 of them responded expressionlessly. They glanced at Du Fan and stood to the side. I am Leng Hua. Leng Hua walked forward and said to the 4 of them, the 4 of you will be under me. Hui Lang and Ying Yi looked at each other. Hui Lang grinned and said, then the remaining 4 belong to us. That's good. We have no choice. As he spoke, he said to them, I am Hui Lang. This is Ying Yi. You don't have to call us young master or master. You can call us left and right protectors. Chapter 5139. Let's go. I'll send you on your way. Fingzhou gestured for them to leave immediately. Yes. Everyone cupped their hands in acknowledgement and walked out. Fingzhou followed them outside. With a wave of his hand, a whirlpool appeared and sent them to their respective destinations. Only then did he remove the whirlpool. With her abilities as a fairy realm powerhouse, she could travel to any place in the upper fairy realm in the shortest amount of time possible. If it were a sovereign realm powerhouse, even if they used a teleportation formation and their flying speed, it would still take them a lot of time. Master, what do I need to do? Ling Shuang stood beside her and asked. Fengzhou smiled and looked at her. You just need to stay by my side. I haven't dealt with any affairs for a few years. I need to see if anything has happened in these few years. As for the next step, we'll just have to wait for Mose to ascend. Now that the 3 potential threats had been eliminated, she only needed to keep an eye on Mose's ascension and prevent anyone from plotting against him. As for the 3 territories, Du Fan and the others would take care of them. This saved her a lot of trouble. Go and tell me, to make some food and send it to the study. Fengzhou patted Ling Shuang's shoulder and left first. Okay. Ling Shuang replied and headed towards the kitchen. As for Tai Song and Yunyang, Tai Song's specialty was being a weapon refiner. Therefore, he could not get involved in these matters. He could only focus on forging weapons at the back of the mountain. He knew that the reason why his master had saved them and brought them here was so that he could refine good weapons. And this was his only strong point. 3 days later. On a floating fairy island, Ling Hua was handling affairs in the palace. This used to be the fairy island of one of the great emperors. With the fall of the great emperor, the spiritual energy of this place had gradually dissipated. Ever since he came here, he had used the phoenix seal given to him by Master to restore the spiritual energy of this place. In the main hall of the palace, there were tables with various issues that needed to be dealt with. After flipping through the last document, he called out, Elder He. Elder He was one of the 4 sovereigns who followed him. At this moment, he was playing chess with another sovereign in a pavilion not far from the palace. Young Master Lang is calling for you. After putting down a chess piece, Elder He spoke to the sovereign opposite him. Elder He's face darkened when he heard this. But he held the chess piece and was thinking about how to make his next move. He pretended not to hear him. Leng Hua slowly walked out of the palace. When he saw the 2 of them playing chess, his eyes flashed and he asked warmly, Old He, have you done what I asked you to do? Isn't it just passing orders to the sovereigns in the territory? I'll go after I finish this game. He said without raising his head. He held the chess piece in his hand and stared at the chessboard. His voice was filled with impatience. Lang Hua had always been gentle and elegant. He spoke gently and had a gentle smile on his face all year round. He gave people the impression that he was like a stream. The flowing water was thin, gentle, and calm. It was not like the turbulent sea, nor was it like a waterfall flowing down from a high place. There was not a trace of sharpness in his entire person. He was like a soft persimmon that could be pinched at will. Chapter 51-40. Hearing his words, a smile appeared on Lang Hua's face, but his eyes were filled with coldness. He looked at him and said warmly, "Is this how Elder He listens to me? Or are you disobeying my master's orders?" Elder He's body stiffened, but he was furious. Who dared to disobey the Empress and the Phoenix Master's orders? However, this person was just a subordinate of the Phoenix Master. Did he expect him, a dignified monarch, to obey his orders and submit to him? Humph. Young Master Lang, you're so arrogant. You're using the Phoenix Master to suppress me. As he spoke, he placed the chess piece in his hand heavily on the chessboard. The ice jade-like chess piece collided with the chessboard, producing a crisp sound. At the same time, his monarch aura also attacked Lang Hua, intending to intimidate him. Bang! At the moment when his pressure came, Lang Hua held the primordial umbrella in one hand and stabbed the tip of the umbrella into the ground. A powerful aura shot out from the umbrella in his hand. It was as sharp as a blade and could suck one's soul. Hiss! Almost at the same time, the two monarchs narrowed their eyes and stood up abruptly. The primordial chaos umbrella. Elder He, do you want to fight me? Lang Hua's voice was still calm. How would Elder He dare to fight him? He wasn't afraid of his strength, but of Fengzhou behind him. He was one of Fengzhou's men. No matter how dissatisfied he was, he didn't dare to fight him. If he did, the Phoenix Master would find out that he was the one who would be punished. He stared at the treasure umbrella in his hand, and his hands under his sleeves were tightly clenched into fists. It was such a waste for such an ancient treasure umbrella to be owned by such a person. How could he be worthy of using this primeval chaos umbrella? However, this person was one of the Phoenix Master's men. Even if he was dissatisfied and wanted to teach him a lesson, he didn't dare. What kind of person was Lang Hua? To outsiders, he was only known as Fengzhou's trusted aide. Internally, he was in charge of internal affairs. To put it simply, he was Fengzhou's butler. He had seen so many different kinds of people. He naturally saw the dissatisfaction, unwillingness in Old He's eyes. In addition to Elder He, the monarch next to him, as well as the cultivators who had just been subdued not long ago, were all paying attention to the situation here. He knew that if he didn't show them his ability today, it would be difficult for him to command them in the future. Not only would he lose face, but he would also lose face for his master. He would fail to live up to his master's trust in him. It had only been a few days since he had taken over, but he knew that this was the opportunity he had been waiting for to make an example out of them. Thus, he restrained the gentle smile on his face and said indifferently, "It seems that I need to let you understand what it means to command a mountain." As soon as his voice fell, he raised the primeval umbrella in his hand and his figure rushed forward like a gust of wind. The primeval umbrella spun in his hand and a powerful airflow was released. It was cold and sharp and carried a terrifying aura as it headed straight for Old He. When Elder He saw that he was the one who made the first move, joy flashed through his eyes. Since he was the one who made the first move, then he wouldn't be polite. Even if the Phoenix Master pursued the matter, he could say that he was protecting himself. Chapter 51-41. Seeing Lang Hua's attack, he did not dodge. Instead, he met it head-on. The spiritual energy gathered in his palm exuded a powerful pressure and aura, forming a vortex in front of him. It transformed into a ferocious tiger head that roared angrily and pounced towards Lang Hua with its mouth wide open. Whoosh! The powerful airflow was accompanied by a monarch's pressure and aura. At this moment, the spiritual energy was so powerful that it caused the air to emit a sharp whistling sound. It was as if a tiger's roar could be faintly heard. Roar. A battle between powerhouses usually ended in a single move. Seeing the two of them fighting, the monarch on the side wanted to step forward and stop them. He was afraid that he would seriously injure Lang Hua. After all, one had to look at the master before beating a dog. If he really hurt Lang Hua, it would be difficult to explain to the Phoenix Master. However, he, who wanted to step forward, paused for a moment. His eyes flashed. Not only did he not step forward, but he also quietly retreated, avoiding the battle between the two. He thought that if Lang Hua was seriously injured, it would be a good thing for them. Perhaps the Phoenix Master would hand over this place to them. Due to this selfishness, he did not step forward to stop them. He even had some expectations in his heart. In his opinion, Lang Hua was no match for he because Lang Hua was weaker than them. He wasn't a monarch-level cultivator. The difference between a monarch-level cultivator and a monarch-level cultivator was like heaven and earth. Therefore, Lang Hua was no match for he. Just as he was secretly calculating in his heart, he could not help but widen his eyes when he saw the next scene. When the spiritual energy on Lang Hua's body surged, a Tai Chi yin-yang diagram formed around him. Compared to he's powerful and turbulent aura, his aura was extremely gentle. The tip of Lang Hua's Chaos Essence umbrella pointed directly at the tiger head pouncing towards him. As the two auras collided, an unexpected scene happened. Bang! Whoosh! The Chaos Essence umbrella in Lang Hua's hand pierced through the tiger head formed by the powerful spiritual aura. As the tiger head was pierced, the airflow fiercely shot towards Lang Hua. Just when he thought that Lang Hua would be sent flying, he saw that the spirit chi flow that shot towards him was absorbed by the Tai Chi yin-yang diagram formed around him. At that moment, Lang Hua let out a low roar. The immemorial umbrella in his hand was like a sharp sword. It flew out from his hand with a swoosh and pierced into he's shoulder at a speed that was too fast for anyone to react. Hiss! He screamed in shock. His eyes widened in disbelief. When the airflow was broken, he quickly condensed the airflow diagram again to block the attack. However, the aura was unstoppable. He could only watch as the sharp tip of the Chaos Essence umbrella pierced his body. A powerful force came along with the Chaos Essence umbrella that pierced into his body. When it pierced into his shoulder, the powerful force did not stop. Instead, it sent him flying. His entire body was nailed to a rockery dozens of meters away by the Chaos Essence umbrella. Ah! He let out a muffled groan as blood overflowed from his mouth. Intense pain assaulted him, causing his face to instantly turn deathly pale. Beads of cold sweat the size of beans seeped out from his forehead and dripped down. He only felt a surge of air in his chest as a mouthful of blood violently spurted out from his throat. Chapter 51-42. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his entire body seemed to wither. However, compared to his injuries, what shocked him even more was how a person who wasn't even a monarch could defeat him. This was impossible. This shouldn't have happened. However, this was the truth. He, a monarch, had actually been defeated. And he had been defeated in one move. He wasn't the only one who was shocked and in disbelief. There was also the monarch who hadn't stopped them from fighting, the cultivators who were watching from afar, and the two monarchs who had just returned from their errands. As they watched this scene, their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. As for Lang Hua, the surging spiritual aura on his body gradually retracted. The Taiji yin-yang diagram formed by his spiritual aura also dissipated as if it had never appeared. The aura on his body was still as gentle as usual, and it wasn't as fierce as it was when he attacked just a moment ago. He placed one hand in front of him and the other behind his back. He wore a crescent moon robe and quietly watched the monarch who was nailed to the fake mountain by the Chaos Essence umbrella dozens of meters away. He watched as the bright red blood seeped out of his wound and dyed his clothes red. Although this injury wasn't fatal to the heart, it was at the shoulder where the fist was above the heart. In addition, the wound wasn't small and was the size of the Chaos Essence umbrella. Therefore, this injury could be said to be not light. Leng Hua looked at him and said indifferently, "This is just a lesson. If there's a next time, I'll take your life." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand. The Chaos Essence umbrella that had pierced through his shoulder and the fake mountain behind him flew out with a whoosh and returned to his hand. Ah! The Chaos Essence umbrella was suddenly pulled out, and Elder He, who was nailed to the fake mountain, fell down. Just as he was about to fall to the ground, he hurriedly stabilized himself. However, he also swayed and leaned back against the fake mountain to stand. He pressed one hand on the wound, and blood seeped out of his palm. He looked at Leng Hua dozens of meters away. At this moment, the sweat on his back was cold, and a tremor ran from the soles of his feet to his heart. This fear and shock made him realize that there were no weak soldiers under the Phoenix Master's command. Yes. He finally lowered his head in Leng Hua's direction and responded. Leng Hua glanced at him, then swept his gaze across the crowd. His voice was indifferent as he said, "Remember, an order must be given. Anyone who disobeys will be killed on the spot." His indifferent voice went from soft to deep. Especially when he said that he had killed 4 people on the spot, it carried a murderous aura that made people tremble in fear. Everyone's heart trembled as they involuntarily replied respectfully, "Yes." It was also at this moment that 2 rays of light flashed out of Leng Hua's space and landed beside him. Only then did everyone see clearly that they were 2 cloud-devouring beasts. Moreover, these 2 cloud-swallowing beasts were the Phoenix Master's contracted beasts. The Phoenix Master's contracted beast was by Leng Hua's side. What did this mean? It went without saying. When Old He saw the 2 cloud-swallowing beasts, his face turned ashen and fear appeared in his eyes. At this moment, his heart was filled with endless regret. Why did he have to take the initiative to provoke Leng Hua? What are you waiting for? Leng Hua frowned. Chapter 51-43. For a monarch rank powerhouse, even if this injury was serious, it wasn't fatal. Especially at this moment, he didn't dare to say that he would bandage his wound and recuperate. He could only quickly carry out his mission and find time to bandage his wound. "Elder Lu, give me the statistics on the island before sunset." Leng Hua looked at the monarch beside him. Yes. I'll go take a look now and ask them to speed up." The monarch said, bowed, and hurriedly left. At this moment, the 2 monarchs who had just returned looked at each other, then walked forward and cupped their hands. "Young Master Leng, we've done what you asked us to do. There are still some things we want to tell you in detail. Come to the hall." Leng Hua said, then turned and walked back. Seeing this, the 2 followed him in. At this moment, they couldn't help but rejoice. Fortunately, when he asked them to carry out the mission, they did as they were told and didn't cause any trouble. Otherwise, they might end up worse than Elder He. Seeing them enter the hall, the few cultivators who left with them exhaled softly and said in a low voice, "I couldn't tell. This young Master Lang has been busy dealing with matters these few days. He looks gentle and has no temper. Who would have thought that he's so strong? Even that monarch was defeated by him. Didn't they say that his strength hasn't reached the monarch rank? He hasn't reached the monarch rank, but this young Master Lang is said to be by the Phoenix Master's side. But, where did he come from? Why haven't I heard of this person before? No matter where he came from, he's not someone to be trifled with. Let's stay away from him and do things according to the rules." The few of them talked as they walked away. At the previous place, the 2 cloud-swallowing beasts looked at each other and dispersed, planning to patrol the area. Their master had asked them to follow Langhua here. First, he thought that if something really happened, they could help. However, Langhua had only asked them to stay here for the past few days. If they didn't come out today, no one would know that they were here. When they returned, they would definitely tell their master that Langhua had become very powerful in the past few years, and his way of doing things was very similar to their master's. On the other side, Langhua gradually took over the affairs of the company, and he gradually grasped the various aspects. On the other side, Hui Lang and Ning Yi also encountered the same problem. However, other than the two of them, Fengjiu had arranged for Fire Phoenix to follow them. In addition, Hui Lang was more direct and his temper wasn't as good as Langhua's. It had only been a few days, but the four of them didn't seem to be obedient, so he directly threatened them. In the main hall, Hui Lang threw a thick stack of documents on the long table. He glared at the four people sitting in the hall and said, "Is this how you do things? If you don't want to listen to my orders, then scram. But let me tell you. Once we've dealt with the matters here, the four of you can wait to get even with us." Hearing this, the four of them, who were holding their teacups, paused and looked up at Hui Lang. "What do you mean? What do you mean?" Humph. Chapter 51-44. The four of them shuddered and narrowed their eyes. Their hearts were in their throats because of his words. They were sent here by the Phoenix Master. If they didn't handle this matter well, they wouldn't be able to get anything out of it. In fact, they might even implicate their families. Thinking of this, they finally realized the seriousness of the matter. Immediately, one of the sovereigns cupped his hands and said, "This old man is at your disposal. I will do my best to help you deal with the matters here. I only hope that you can put in a good word for me in front of the Phoenix Master. This old man will be very grateful." The three sovereigns beside him hurriedly cupped their hands and said, "We were muddle-headed earlier. Please calm down, Left Guardian. From today onwards, we will obey your orders. We won't dare to disobey." Grey Wolf's expression eased up when he saw this. He glanced at them and said, "As long as you help us deal with the matters here with all your heart, we'll naturally put in a good word for you in front of the madam. You won't miss out on your contributions." "Thank you, Left Guardian." The four of them hurriedly said, their hearts filled with gratitude. "You may leave. Deal with the matters that I've assigned to you first. If there are any problems, come back and report to me." Hui Lang waved them away. "Yes, sir," they replied and retreated. After they left, Hui Lang looked at Ing Yi and raised his chin proudly. "How was it? I told you that we shouldn't give them too much face, right? To deal with them, we have to be fiercer and more ruthless than them. Otherwise, they won't know how powerful we are." Ing Yi glanced at him and said, "These people are all sovereigns. It's normal for them to be dissatisfied. We have the Fire Phoenix here. I wonder how Du Fan and Langhua are doing." Langhua will be fine with the two cloud-swallowing beasts following him. Besides, Langhua is not as weak as you think. He has been by Madam's side for so long. Haven't you seen enough of his methods?" Hui Lang said with a smile, "As for Du Fan, you don't have to worry about him. He's full of evil intentions. When it comes to playing tricks, he's the best around Madam. Besides, Madam can see that you've given us Fire Phoenix and Langhua two cloud-swallowing beasts, but Du Fan has nothing. Don't you understand?" Hearing this, Ing Yi was silent and didn't speak again. After a pause, he said, "I'll go see how they are doing. If there's anything, call me." After saying that, he left first. Seeing him leave, Hui Lang thought for a moment and followed him out of the main hall. He wanted to see if the four of them had left to carry out their tasks. On the other side, on the fairy island where Du Fan was, the four sovereigns were feeling uneasy. They had wanted to give Du Fan the cold shoulder and force him to admit defeat in front of the four of them. This way, at least they would have a say in this place. However, they didn't expect that, in response to their actions, not only did he not look for them, he even made them mere figureheads. Chapter 51:45. The other three also frowned. One of them said, "I didn't think he would be so powerful." There were still some cultivators on the island who hadn't left, but now they've all been subdued by him and are under his command. The Phoenix Master told us to listen to his orders. Now that things are like this, if the Phoenix Master were to find out, would she? Things did not develop in the direction they wanted. This had practically disrupted their plans, and their hearts gradually became uneasy. Then what do you think we should do? Lower our heads to him. One of the sovereigns said with a sullen face and displeasure in his eyes, "That Dufan. That brat only dares to do this because he's by the Phoenix Master's side. If we lower our heads today, how can we raise our heads in the future? Then what do you have in mind for the current situation?" The sovereign who spoke first asked. Hearing this, they fell silent for a while. After a while, the sovereign with displeasure in his eyes said, "Since ancient times, the strong have always been respected. We can listen to his orders, unless he's stronger than us." As he spoke, he glanced at the three of them and said, "I'll challenge him to a battle. If I win, he'll listen to our orders. When the time comes, I'll let him tell the Phoenix Master that he gave up his authority because he's not strong enough. What do you think?" "This. He's not stupid. He knows he can't beat you, so how can he accept your challenge?" Another sovereign said and shook his head. He felt that Dufan wouldn't agree to such an absurd request. "How would I know if I don't try? If I lose, I'll lower my head to him. What's wrong with that?" The sovereign said and stood up. He brushed his robe and walked towards the main hall. In the main hall, Dufan had a long table placed in the middle of the hall because he had to deal with some matters. At this moment, he was dealing with some matters as he listened to the reports of a few cultivators in the middle of the hall. "Young master, this is the list of items on the island. Now, everything has been returned to its place and people have been sent to guard it. Young master, you can go and check it at any time." As he spoke, one of them walked forward and placed the list in front of Dufan. "Sir, after releasing the news, we've received many sovereigns today. These are the invitations they sent in. They're already waiting outside the island, waiting for Sir to summon them." Another person said and handed over the list of invitations. "Sir, this is the information you asked us to collect." Another person also handed over the list of invitations before returning to his feet. Dufan flipped through the invitation cards. There were about a dozen of them, and on them were the names of their families and origins. Therefore, after a cursory glance, he looked up some information about these visiting sovereigns. "Yes." The cultivator respectfully replied before retreating, calm however. Before the sovereigns could arrive, the 4 sovereigns who had been idling on the island arrived first. The 4 of them entered. One of them walked in front. When he saw Dufan in the middle of the hall, he coughed loudly. Chapter 51:46. "Sir, we were unable to stop the 4 sovereigns." 2 cultivators who were guarding outside the hall lowered their heads and knelt down on one knee in the hall. "Go and receive your punishment. 30 whips each," Dufan said in a low voice. "Yes." The 2 of them did not dare to beg for mercy. After hearing the 30 whips, they quickly retreated. This Sir had not taken over this place for long, but his methods and abilities had made everyone on the island revere him. He had always been a man of his word and dealt with matters with lightning speed. He was even more strict in enforcing the law. Because of this, in just a few days, no one on the island dared to be disloyal. Seeing this, the eyes of the 4 sovereigns flashed. No one knew what they were thinking. "What's the matter?" Dufan's voice softened. He put down the documents in his hands and leaned back. He picked up his teacup and took a sip of tea. As for the 4 sovereigns, they were not the only ones who did not understand why Du Fan ignored them and did not cause them any trouble. Even the 2 cultivators who were guarding Du Fan were puzzled. From the way he handled things and his ability, he should not be afraid of these 4 people. However, from the first day when he sent someone to summon them over, not a single one of them showed up. Since then, he had treated the 4 sovereigns as if they were invisible air. No one knew what kind of medicine he was selling in his gourd. Sir Du, although we were summoned by the Phoenix Master to await your orders, from our point of view, with Sir Du's age and experience, you are not qualified to lead us 4 sovereigns. So. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Du Fan. I'm really sorry. You came at the wrong time. I still have guests to meet today. I don't have time to listen to you. As Du Fan spoke, he looked at the 4 of them and smiled. If there's nothing else, you can go back first. Hearing this, the 4 of them were stunned. They did not expect him to say such a thing. They had already come all the way here and had even spoken their minds. Could it be that he wouldn't fly into a rage out of humiliation? Or would he fly into a rage and slam the table? Why would he ask them to go back with a smile and a gentle voice? For a moment, looking at the smile on his face, their hearts couldn't help but sink. They had a faint premonition, as well as an inexplicable panic. Du Gongzi, we. Just as Shang Xian was about to speak, he suddenly heard a voice behind him. Turning around, he saw a dozen or so sovereigns walking over. The 4 of you can go back first. As you can see, I have a guest to see. Du Fan smiled and put down the teacup, fanning himself with the fan in his hand. Send the 4 of you back, Du Fan said leisurely to the 2 cultivators beside him. Yes. The 2 cultivators respectfully replied. They stepped forward and gestured to the 4 people, please. When they saw this, the 4 of them looked at each other, pursed their lips, and turned around to leave. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling face. This Du Fan had always been gentle and kind to them. Even if they wanted to use the mobile fury, there was nothing they could do. Moreover, there were more than a dozen sovereigns present. They could not afford to cause trouble in front of these sovereigns. Hence, they could only return to discuss this matter. Chapter 51-47. At this moment, the cultivator who led the crowd and said, everyone, please wait for a moment. I will go in and report. Then, he went into the main hall to report. Master, the sovereigns have arrived. They are waiting outside the main hall. The cultivator cupped his hands and bowed. Let them in. Du Fan said as he covered up some documents on the long table. Yes. The cultivator replied and went out to invite the sovereigns in. Then, he retreated and waited outside the main hall. More than 10 sovereigns came in and saw a man holding a fan sitting in the middle of the hall. They looked at him secretly and then looked away. They cupped their hands and said, Greetings, Master Du, everyone, please take a seat. Du Fan gestured for them to sit down. Looking at them, he casually fanned himself with the fan in his hand as he said unhurriedly, I'm sure all of you have heard of my master's great name. When the sovereigns heard this, they said, the Empress Phoenix Master's name is well known. Although we have never seen the Empress Phoenix's face, we have always admired her. Hearing this, Du Fan laughed and said, everyone is smart. I have always liked to deal with smart people. He smiled and stood up. He closed the fan in his hand and patted it gently as he walked into the main hall. You may not be familiar with me, so allow me to introduce myself. He walked leisurely in the main hall and said, my name is Du Fan. The Empress Phoenix Master you are talking about is my master. This time, she sent me here to take over this territory and handle the affairs here. It can be said that in the future, I will be the one to decide and handle all the major matters in this territory. As he spoke, He paused and turned to look at the sovereigns. He smiled and said, "It's only been a short time, so you probably don't know much about me. But that's fine. As time passes, I believe you will all know what kind of person I am." Hearing his words, the dozen or so people present were slightly moved. In fact, before they came here, they had heard that this Du Fan had completely taken over this place in just a few days. His methods and abilities could be said to be top-notch. They had even heard that the Empress and the Phoenix Master had summoned 4 sovereigns for him to command. These 4 sovereigns should be the 4 that they had met when they entered. However, they had also heard that these 4 sovereigns seemed to be unconvinced by Du Fan. After arriving here, they had practically ignored Du Fan's existence and did nothing. As for Du Fan, he seemed to treat the 4 of them as if they were invisible and left them hanging. This made them feel puzzled in their hearts. Since those 4 people didn't put him in their eyes, why would he let them stay on this immortal island? Instead of doing anything to them. Suppressing their thoughts, they looked at the smiling Du Fan in front of them, who seemed to be easy to get along with. They faintly felt a sense of dread. How could a person who could be placed in such an important position by the Empress Fingzhou be useless? They were afraid that this person in front of them was also a ruthless person. Chapter 51-48. When the others saw this, they immediately stood up and saluted. "We will follow young Master Du's orders." "Good." Du Fan revealed a satisfied expression and gestured, "Everyone, please take a seat. It just so happens that I have something to tell all of you." Thus, in the main hall, more than 10 sovereigns listened attentively to Du Fan's instructions. After they understood the situation, they did not stay for long and left first. After they left, the 2 sovereigns beside Du Fan looked at each other and asked, "Young Master, do the 4 sovereigns want to?" He gestured with his hands, but when he saw Du Fan's indifferent gaze, his heart trembled and he could not help but lower his head and take a step back. "Do your job well. As for the others, I have my own plans." Du Fan said indifferently. "Yes." The 2 sovereigns replied and did not dare to speak again. In the 3 months after Du Fan, Leng Hua, Hui Lang, and Ning Yi took over the 3 territories, everything returned to normal and stabilized. The speed was so fast that it shocked all the powerful cultivators. In particular, in the territory under Du Fan's jurisdiction, there was a huge incident that shocked all the sovereigns. Have you heard? A man called Du Fan, who is under the command of the Phoenix Master, killed 4 sovereigns a few days ago. In a restaurant, a few sovereigns gathered together and discussed in low voices. This news spread very quickly and everyone heard about it. It is said that this man called Du Fan is a trusted subordinate of the Phoenix Master. After the Phoenix Master killed the 3 sovereigns, she sent a few people to take over the matter. In a large territory, they only took 3 months to stabilize it. Their methods and abilities are extraordinary. Another person lowered his voice and looked around. He lowered his voice again and said, "I also know that the 4 sovereigns Du Fan killed were sent to him by the Phoenix Master. However, the 4 of them were arrogant because they were sovereigns and did not take Du Fan's orders seriously. At first, Du Fan did not do anything to them. However, once the territory was stabilized, he killed the 4 of them to establish his authority." When the person beside heard this, he could not help but be surprised. He said, "The Phoenix Master sent the 4 sovereigns for him to use. Why did he dare to kill them?" "That's because the Phoenix Master gave the order that Du Fan was in charge of everything in the territory. He did not even need to report the 4 sovereigns to the Phoenix Master." Another person said, "I heard that the people who took over the 3 great emperors are all top-notch people by the Phoenix Master's side. I just don't know where they came from. I've never heard of such people before." At the same time, Hui Lang, Ning Yi, and the 8 sovereigns on the enchanted island where Leng Hua was staying were also frightened after hearing the news. They did not expect the 4 sovereigns to die like this. Moreover, they were killed by Du Fan alone. At this moment, they could not help but feel lucky that they were not as foolish as the four sovereigns. Compared to the discussions everywhere, the main character of this incident, Du Fan, had already returned to the enchanted island in Fengzhou to report the events of the past 3 months. Master, this is what happened. Du Fan roughly described the events of the past 3 months, including how he killed the 4 sovereigns. Chapter 51-49. She put down a chess piece unhurriedly, then looked at Du Fan and said, "The 12 sovereigns that I called over this time were not absolutely loyal to me. I assigned them to you so that you can torture them. If they are sensible and help you do this well, they will be rewarded. If they don't obey, you can just kill them." Seeing Du Fan put down a chess piece, she also picked up a chess piece. After looking at the board, she put it down and said, "I have always trusted your ability to handle matters. I will not interfere with your decisions. Moreover, you have handled this matter very well." As she said this, she paused and looked up at him. She smiled and said, "That's enough. Go and rest. Speaking of which, you haven't had a good look at this immortal island since you came here. Go and walk around. As for Lang Hua and the others, I heard from the news that they sent back that they will probably be a day or 2 late." "Yes," Du Fan replied. After bowing to her, he nodded at Mo Chen and turned to leave. Mo Chen watched him leave and smiled warmly. "I didn't expect you to have a way to break the Heavenly Tao's boundary and bring them up here. It wasn't easy." Fengzhou smiled and said, "I studied it for a few years before I could do it." Mo Chen smiled and took a sip of tea. He put down the teacup and looked at Fengzhou, saying, "You can do what others can't. That's you, Fengzhou." Hearing this, Fengzhou smiled and said, "There are also things that I can't do. Look, Feng Yi and the others, I'll have to trouble you. With your current reputation and status, you can send them to any sect you want. However, since you don't want others to know about your relationship with them, I can do it." He looked at her and said, "That South Luo immortal sect is closer to my place. This time, let the 2 of them come back with me. When the time comes, I will send them directly to that sect." "Okay." She smiled and nodded, saying, "I don't have to worry about Zhao Yang and the others, but I'm always worried that Feng Yi will cause trouble. Mo Zhe should also be ascending soon. I don't have time to take care of them, so I can only trouble you. There's no need to say such things between us." As Mo Chen spoke, he looked at her and said slowly, "Now that you are the ruler of the 5 great territories, you have a great reputation. The other reclusive great emperors probably don't want to be enemies with you. Once Mo Zhe succeeds in his ascension, your family can be reunited." Hearing this, Fengzhou looked at him and saw that his eyebrows were like a painting. His white robe was spotless and his whole body exuded an otherworldly immortal qi. Compared to his past self, the current him seemed to be right in front of her, but was actually very far away. She said softly, "Mo Chen, the years of immortality are long. I really hope that in the years to come, you can meet a woman who is truly in love with you and accompany you through your long life." Chapter 51-50. Although he said so, he knew that he was destined to be alone for the rest of his life. Because in this world, except for Fengzhou, there was no one else who could move his heart. Hearing his words, Fengzhou couldn't help but reveal a gentle smile. She had happiness, and she also hoped that he could have the same happiness as her. She believed that such an outstanding and good person like him would definitely meet his own happiness in the future. 2 days later, Lang Hua, Hui Lang, and Ying Yi came back after arranging things there. In the hall, they reported to Fengzhou what had happened in the past 3 months. "Now everything is on track. Everything has stabilized. When I left, I also arranged for people to guard the enchanted island. It can be said that there are no major issues," Lang Hua said, looking at his master who was sitting on the main seat. "Madam, it's the same on our side. Everything has been settled. It doesn't matter if no one watches over there in the future. As long as we have time, we can go there and take a look occasionally. Hui Lang also said. This time, they brought back all their contracted beasts. As soon as they came back, the two cloud-swallowing beasts and the fire phoenix wandered around the enchanted island. Compared to the other two enchanted islands, they probably liked this one more. Well done. Now that you're back, have a good rest. I've already asked me, to make some delicious food for you. She comes from the family of the god of cookery and is very good at cooking. If you want to eat anything in the future, ask her to make it for you. Fengjiu said with a smile. Okay. The three of them responded. They looked at each other and smiled. Ah, Jiao. A voice came. Several people in the hall saw Feng Yi in a purple robe running in from outside, followed by Zhao Yang. Seeing him, Fengjiu leaned back and looked at him leisurely, asking, "What's wrong?" Feng Yi glanced at Lang Hua and the other two. He ran forward and came to Fengjiu. He reached out and hugged her arm, saying, "Okay, Ah Jiao, let us play for a while more. You saw that we were trapped in the forest as soon as we came here. We just came out and you want us to go to the enchanted gate again. After we enter the enchanted gate, we can't go out to play. Ah Jiao, let us wait for a while more. A year, how about a year? Let us go out and travel by ourselves. A year later, we will go to the enchanted gate, okay?" Feng Jiao was hugged by him with one hand, and her body was swayed by him like a spoiled child. She rolled her eyes speechlessly and said, "Feng Yi, watch your image. You're not a child anymore. Image can't be eaten. Besides, I'm still a child," he said faintly and looked at her with an aggrieved expression. Seeing the scene in front of them, Lang Hua and the other two looked at each other. They smiled and bowed first, saying, "Master, we'll leave first." "Okay." Fengjiu responded. After watching them leave, she reached out and flicked Feng Yi away from her arm. She watched him fall into the hole. She stood up and said, "You see, you're so weak now. Do you think you have the ability to travel outside with your strength?" Chapter 51-51. Looking at Feng Yi who had his head lowered, she sighed softly and said, "It's not that I want to discourage you, but you are grandfather's son. Since you were young, everyone in the Feng family has cherished and protected you. But because of this, you have experienced many things since you were young. When you were young, you encountered a disaster and left home to cultivate in the mountains. You have not had an easy journey. I know this, but I hope that you can do better. You can become stronger, so strong that you will not encounter the dangers that you encountered when you were young." Hearing her words, Feng Yi lowered his head guiltily. He knew that he was being willful. He stood up and looked at Fengjiu, saying, "Ah Jiao, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. You are doing this for my own good, I know. I shouldn't have been so willful. I will listen to you and go to the immortal sect." Fengjiu said, "It's fine as long as you know that I'm doing this for your own good. I specially asked Mo Qin to take the two of you to the South Net Immortal Sect. It's the #1 sect in the immortal dimension, and countless cultivators would fight to the death to enter it. Both of you have to cultivate properly once you arrive there. You have to know that it isn't just the two of you who have to cultivate in the sect, even Hao, Chen, and you, will be cultivating by their master's side." "I understand." Feng Yi nodded and said. "There is one more thing." She looked at Feng Yi and Zhao Yang and said, "After leaving this immortal island, you must not mention your relationship with me to anyone." "Yes, we understand." The two of them replied. "Okay, go back and prepare. Tomorrow, you will set off with Mo Chen." She patted their shoulders and said, "Okay." The two of them replied and walked out. Ling Shuang walked out from the side and looked at the two people who were leaving. He said, "Only Master has a way." "However, Master, do we need someone to protect them secretly when they go to the Gate of Immortality?" Fengjiu shook his head helplessly and said, "Feng Yi is at the age when he is rebellious. Fortunately, as long as we talk to him nicely, he will listen. As for the immortal sect, Mo Chen will send them in. Generally speaking, there is no need to worry. Furthermore, the rules of the South Luo immortal sect are very strict. Killing each other will not happen in the sect." "By the way, where's Mo Chen?" Fengjiu asked. "He's admiring the scenery at the Rainbow Bridge," Ling Shuang said. "And ask me, to cook a few dishes to go with the wine. Send them to the peach blossom tree later." Fengjiu instructed as he walked out. Seeing that she had left, Ling Shuang also walked towards the kitchen. After instructing me, he went to check on Lang Hua first. The next morning, Fengjiu sent Mo Chen, Feng Yi, and Zhao Yang out of the Immortal Island. Looking at Feng Yi and Zhao Yang, Fengjiu reminded them again, "Keep the medicine that I gave you well in case you need it. When you reach the Gate of Immortality, focus on your cultivation. When I have time, I will visit you." "Okay, we will cultivate well." The two of them replied. "Don't worry. I will tell the immortal elder of the South Luo immortal sect to keep an eye on them." Mo Chen said gently, indicating that she did not need to worry. "Okay, when Mo Zhe ascends, we will find time to visit you. We will have a good gathering." Fengjiu looked at him and said, "I will wait for you." Mo Chen said with a smile. After saying goodbye, he left with the two of them. Chapter 51-52. To Xianyuan Mose, who was in the lower immortal world, 3 months of time was like the sand between his fingers, and it passed by in the blink of an eye. When he woke up, he could feel the power accumulating in his body, as if waiting for the right moment to break through the final barrier. He was preparing to ascend and return to the heavenly realm. He was the master of this realm, and now that he was about to ascend, he naturally wanted to do it here. He sat cross-legged at the peak of the mountain, and the aura around him surged. About 100 meters away from him, Qi Kong and the others were standing guard. Although the Yamo Lord's ascension this time shouldn't be a big problem, they were still worried. They put down what they were doing and came here to guard the Yamo Lord's final test. They believed that with the Yamo Lord's strength, his ascension this time would be smooth. The wind and clouds in the sky surged, and a thundercloud appeared in the sky above Xianyuan Mose. It seemed to cover an area of over 100 kilometers and blocked out the light. Because of this, the light in sight dimmed. Rumbled up, the muffled sound of thunder rang out in the clouds, one after another, as if it was brewing a powerful force. Until the first bolt of lightning flashed, and the heavenly thunder struck down from the clouds with a rumble, striking Xianyuan Mose's body below. Crack! Rumble! There was a loud rumble, and the sky seemed to light up with the first bolt of lightning. However, after the heavenly thunder struck down, the sky darkened again. A powerful airflow surged on Xianyuan Mose's body, and the spiritual aura around him crazily surged into his body. The moment the heavenly thunder sounded, Fengjiu in the upper immortal realm waved his hand, and a floating mirror appeared in the void. The mirror showed the scene of Xianyuan Mose undergoing the heavenly thunder. Seeing him sitting there, her eyes flashed, and she became nervous. Even though she knew that he would successfully ascend, her heart would still be nervous before she saw him ascend. After all, he had failed to ascend back then. If it wasn't for Tian Jizi, there would be no Xianyuan Mose in this world. This time, I know you'll definitely succeed. "Ah, Zhe, I'll be waiting for you here," she softly muttered. At the same time, she released her divine sense to prevent anyone from taking advantage of the heavenly lightning to do anything to him. Behind her, Du Fan, Ling Hua, Hui Lang, and the others were also watching. Seeing that he was about to ascend again, they were excited. With the previous failure, they believed that he wouldn't take this risk if he wasn't confident. Therefore, this time, he would definitely ascend. On the other side, after hearing the heavenly thunder, the Qing Emperor's eyes flickered. He waved his hand, and a floating image appeared in front of him. When he saw Xianyuanmo's undergoing the heavenly thunder, he said in a low voice with some surprise, "I didn't expect him to try to ascend again in such a short time. I wonder how it will turn out this time." He wanted to call his 3 disciples over to watch, but when he remembered that they were still in seclusion, he gave up on the idea. If Xianyuanmo successfully ascended this time, he would tell them the good news. Chapter 51-53. They weren't the only ones who heard the thunder. Even some of the hidden almighties had heard it. Is this the thunder for ascension again? Who's preparing to ascend this time? Take a look and you'll know. As they spoke, another elder who was sitting at the same stone table waved his hand and a mirror appeared in the void. It's him again. The other elder who was stroking his beard paused and looked at the person in the image in surprise. Oh. You know him. The other 2 looked at the elder. The 3 of them were all great emperors. However, they hadn't been involved in the affairs of the world for many years. It was as if they had retired from the world. However, too many things had happened in the past few years. In particular, the 3 great emperors had been killed by the Empress and the Phoenix Master a few days ago. Hence, the 3 of them had gathered to talk about this matter and the Lord of Fingzhou. However, they hadn't expected to see another expert preparing to ascend while the 3 of them were chatting. The 2 of you probably don't know. Coincidentally, I know a little about him. The elder who spoke stroked his beard and smiled. After looking at the 2 of them, he looked at the person in the image in the void and said, "This person has a great background." Putting aside his other identities, his most famous identity is the husband of Fingzhou, Xianyuanmo's. Xianyuanmo's. He's the husband of the Empress and the Phoenix Master? The one who spoke was a middle-aged great emperor. He looked at the person in the image and said, "Although I've never seen this person before, his name is well known." So it's him. I've heard that he's a heavenly calamity star, but he's also a heavenly fate emperor. He's destined to be a heavenly fate emperor. Now that I've seen him today, I feel that he matches the rumors. The other elder said as he looked at the black-robed man who was enduring the thunder. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. "Look, his aura seems a little different," the elder said in surprise as he looked at Xianyuanmo's in the image. "What's with that dark aura?" The other 2 were also slightly startled, clearly not expecting to see such a scene. The aura of darkness has always been possessed by demonic cultivators. There's also the fact that they practice dark techniques, but that's something that righteous cultivators despise. Why does Xianyuanmo's have the aura of darkness on him? Could it be that he cultivates the demonic Tao? As the old man spoke, he frowned slightly and looked at the 2 people beside him. Since Fingzhou is an immortal cultivator, her husband can't be a devil cultivator. There must be a problem. Another person said thoughtfully, "Perhaps, we'll find out the reason after he ascends." "If he's a demonic cultivator, are we going to let him ascend?" An old man asked with a frown. Hearing this, the 2 people next to him glanced at him and asked, "What else? Do you dare to stop him? Let's not talk about Xianyuanmo's strength. We just finished talking about Fingzhou. She single-handedly killed 3 great emperors. With such strength, which great emperor in the immortal realm can be her match?" The middle-aged great emperor took a sip of tea and said, "I'm prepared to be on good terms with Fingzhou. I don't intend to be on bad terms with her because I have no chance of winning. This time, I'm still planning to marry her." Chapter 51-54. Indeed, there's no news of her child. After all, if someone from the lower immortal realm wants to come up, they have to ascend. The middle-aged man paused, looked at them, and said, "However, before that, I received a piece of news." "What news?" the 2 elders asked. Do you know the origins of the people who are now in charge of the 3 destroyed great emperor's territories? He looked at the 2 elders and asked. Hearing this, the 2 elders looked at each other and shook their heads. How would we know where the people around Fengzhou came from? They had not asked about this for many years. If it were not for the fact that 4 great emperors had died in the past few years, they would not have gathered here to discuss this matter. I heard that Fengzhou broke the boundary of the heavenly Tao. She can freely travel between the upper immortal realm and the lower immortal realm. The people who are now in charge of the 3 great emperors' territories were brought up by her from the lower immortal realm. They used to be her trusted subordinates. The middle-aged man said. Seeing their shocked expressions, he knew that they did not know about this matter. How is this possible? For so many years, no one has been able to break the boundary of the void. Even great emperors from the upper immortal realm cannot go to the lower immortal realm. If cultivators from the lower immortal realm want to come up, the only way is to ascend. Only by ascending will the heavenly road open. It has been like this for millions of years. That's true. However, Fengzhou did something that no one has been able to do for millions of years. The middle-aged great emperor looked at the 2 elders and said, that's why I said that Fengzhou can only be friends, not enemies. If this is true, then it's really unbelievable. The elder next to him murmured, but if this is true, then why did Xianyuan Moses ascend from below? Why didn't he come up directly? When he said this, the middle-aged great emperor laughed. Ha ha ha, it seems that you've become muddle-headed. Don't you know that ascending and ascending are 2 different things? If that's really the case, then Fengzhou is really too incredible. The old man muttered. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said, if that's the case, then her child will naturally be brought up as well. This marriage will be possible. However, how old is Fengzhou and Xianyuan Moses' child? Can they be married? Another old man asked. In his heart, he was also thinking that when he returned, he had to get someone to inquire about it properly so that he wouldn't lose the initiative. Haha. When the middle-aged man saw that both of them had the same idea, he smiled and said, actually, I'm telling you this because I know that it won't be easy to become in-laws with Fengzhou. Furthermore, even among the younger generation of our clan, I reckon that only 1 or 2 of the top direct descendants can compete with her and Xianyuan Moses' child. As he spoke, he smiled and glanced at the 2 of them. He said unhurriedly, moreover, as far as I know, among the descendants of the 2 of you, there is almost no one who is the same age as Feng Ix's child. The 2 elders looked at each other and asked, how old is her child? Chapter 51-55. The 2 of them were slightly startled. They thought about it and agreed that if they wanted to marry Fengzhou's daughter, the person had to be the son of the current head of their family. Only the young master of their family would have the right to mention it to Fengzhou. However, they did have a young master in their family, but he was already in his 20s. Even if they wanted to marry a 10-year-old girl, Fengzhou and Xianyuan Moses would probably not agree. The 2 of them shook their heads and smiled bitterly. Looks like you've already asked around. Would you share your plans and information with us? Ha ha ha, of course. The middle-aged great emperor laughed heartily. He looked at the image in the sky and said, therefore, although I don't know why Xianyuan Moses has the dark aura, I still hope that he can successfully ascend. When the time comes, we can take this opportunity to congratulate him, and at the same time, we can test their intentions and see if they have this intention. Since that's the case, let's wait here and watch him ascend. An old man said as his gaze fell on the image in the sky. Everyone was paying attention to Xianyuan Moses' ascension. Because of Fengzhou's deterrence, no one dared to secretly attack him. As a result, he was able to withstand the tribulation of the heavenly lightning without a hitch. As the days passed, bolts of lightning struck and tempered him. On this day, when the last bolt of lightning was about to strike, everyone held their breaths. It's the last one. Luo Yu said, feeling a little excited. Yama Lord has ascended. We can finally reunite with Master and the others. Chi Kong also said, his eyes filled with joy. Fengjiu looked at the last bolt of lightning in the sky, her palms sweating uncontrollably. Du Fan and the others standing behind her saw that she was a little nervous and said, Master, Yama Lord will definitely ascend smoothly. Don't worry. I know, I'm just nervous, Fengjiu said, exhaling softly. I'm even more nervous than when I ascended. Du Fan smiled and gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. Master, why don't you think about how we should celebrate after the Yama Lord ascends? When Fengjiu heard this, his attention shifted a little. He turned to look at them and revealed a smile. His gaze landed on Song Mi, and said, when the time comes, how about we invite me, Er's father and a few of her brothers to make a banquet for us? Sure. When does Master want to do it? I'll send a message to my father and the others right away and have them prepare to come over. Song Mir clapped her hands and said with a smile. Fengjiu smiled, turned back to look at the image in the void, and said slowly, after he ascends, you can send the news back. Okay. Song Mir replied. In her mind, she was already thinking about what kind of dishes to make. At this moment, an extremely loud bolt of lightning struck down. The sound of the thunder was so powerful that it was like a strike of thunder. It gathered all the power of the previous bolts of lightning and turned them into one final bolt, which landed heavily on Xianyuanmo's body. Chapter 51-56. That's the ancient Black Lotus. On a certain deity island, the three great emperors looked at the blooming black lotus from Xianyuanmo's chest in astonishment. Is that the Black Lotus? Didn't I hear that the Black Lotus had disappeared for many years? Why would it appear on Xianyuanmo's body? An old man stroked his beard as he spoke, deep in thought. No wonder he has a dark aura. It's because the ancient Black Lotus is on him. But the middle-aged great emperor hesitated and looked at the two of them. He said solemnly, the ancient Black Lotus is an evil lotus. Looking at the situation, Xianyuanmo's spiritual soul already has the imprint of the Black Lotus. If he ascends, I'm afraid he will become a demon, right? Hearing this, one of the elders didn't speak. He stroked his beard and stared at the man and the lotus in the void. No one knew what he was thinking. The other elder laughed and shook his head. He looked at the middle-aged great emperor and said, no, you're wrong. The middle-aged great emperor looked at him in confusion. Even the elder who was deep in thought looked at the elder who spoke, waiting for him to continue. The elder smiled and looked at the man and the lotus in the void. His wise eyes were filled with joy. He said unhurriedly, since ancient times, evil and darkness have always been in people's hearts. Whether a person will become a demon or not doesn't depend on whether the Black Lotus has been imprinted on his spiritual soul. It depends on whether he has darkness in his heart, whether he has an evil side. He paused and stroked his beard. He looked at Xianyuanmo's and the Black Lotus in the image and said, actually, people will more or less have a dark and weak side in their hearts. However, if their willpower is strong, the darkness won't be able to devour them. If their willpower isn't strong, the Black Lotus will trigger the darkest and most evil side in their hearts. Then, they will be controlled by the Black Lotus. Otherwise, they will be the ones controlling the Black Lotus. As he said this, he smiled and looked at the two of them. This is very important. The one who is in control decides everything. Moreover, he paused and said, the Black Lotus is an ancient item. It's called the Black Lotus of Destruction. When it falls into the hands of some cultivators, the dark power of the Black Lotus can make them stronger. However, it can also make them lose their conscience and eventually fall into the evil Tao. In order to make up for their own weakness and incompetence, people call the Black Lotus an evil and dark item. He took a sip of tea and continued, but in fact, it is one of the 4 lotus seeds of the chaotic green lotus. This black lotus doesn't have the regenerative power of the green lotus of creation, the purifying power of the red lotus of fire, or the holy power of the golden lotus of the virtuous golden lotus of virtue. It's called the black lotus of destruction. It is called the black lotus of destruction, its power of the lotus's lotus. It's a black lotus's lotus. It's called the lotus of the black lotus of the lotus's lotus of the lotus of the lotus of the lotus's lotus's lotuses. Chapter 51-57. Don't rush to speak. Take a closer look at the black lotus and Xianyuanmo's. The old man gestured for him to look at the man and the lotus in the picture. I see. The other old man nodded in realization. No wonder I couldn't put my finger on it when I looked at it. The middle-aged great emperor couldn't help but ask, why don't you tell me what you know? Ha 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 ha. Seeing that he was anxious, the two old men laughed loudly. They stroked their beards and looked at each other. One of them said, You. How old are you? Why are you still so impatient? The old man smiled and said, Take a closer look. Isn't Xianyuanmo's and the black lotus like one? Hearing this, the middle-aged great emperor was stunned. He looked at the picture and saw that the man and the lotus were very harmonious. It was as if there was a lotus in the man and a man in the lotus. The man and the lotus had reached the realm of one with the lotus. Why didn't I notice it just now? He said in surprise. Only then did he understand what they meant. The realm of one with the lotus. It seems that Xianyuanmo's has indeed become the owner of the black lotus of destruction. That's right. The old man nodded. Since he is the owner, the black lotus's dark chi is a powerful force for him. It seems that we have to prepare a generous gift to congratulate him. The upper immortal realm is going to give birth to another powerful great emperor. It's really not easy. The other old man stroked his beard and smiled. On the other side, when Emperor Qing saw the black lotus of destruction on Xianyuanmo's, he was also stunned. Then, he revealed an imperceptible smile and whispered, as expected of Xianyuanmo's. On the other side, on the fairy island where Fengjiu was, when Fengjiu saw that he and the black lotus had reached the realm of one with the lotus, he was slightly stunned. Then, he revealed a relieved smile. It seems that I don't have to worry anymore. She had been worried about what would happen to Black Lotus in the future, but now it seemed that her worries were superfluous. It was also at this moment that the loudest thunderclap rang out, and the dark clouds in the sky dispersed. Multicolored rays of light shone down from the 9 heavens, and celestial music came from the clouds. At the same time, the path to heaven slowly opened within the multicolored rays of light. Qi Kong and the others looked at the scene excitedly and couldn't help but shout, "Good! This is great! The Yama Lord has finally ascended. Look, the heavenly road is open. Just like when Master ascended. The grand occasion of ascension shook the 9 heavens. Now, all the sovereigns in the lower immortal realm naturally knew about it. They looked at the multicolored light enviously, as well as the heavenly road that had opened up to the upper immortal realm. This heavenly road could be said to be the path that all cultivators yearned for the most. However, for many years, except for Fengjiu, Mo Qin, and Xianyuanmo's, almost no one had ascended, and no one dared to try. They envied them for being able to ascend to the 9 heavens, but they didn't dare to try, because if they failed, they would die immediately. All the sovereigns and cultivators were watching this grand occasion. They knew that perhaps in this lifetime, they would never have the chance to see another cultivator ascend. The heavenly road was open. Chapter 51-58. His deep gaze landed on the mountains and rivers in front of him. His black robes fluttered in the wind, emitting a whistling sound. He patrolled his territory like a monarch until the godlike figure slowly flew up from the holy light. He didn't take a step, but the holy light and the cool breeze in the air lifted him up and led him to the open path to heaven. His figure slowly rose up from the path. Congratulations, Yama Lord. Congratulations, Yama Lord. Chi Kong and the others were excited, and their faces revealed excited and joyful smiles. They cupped their hands and bowed. Their voices were sonorous and powerful, and they contained a powerful pressure and spiritual energy aura that reverberated in the sky. Xianyuan Mose looked at them. When his gaze landed on them, he nodded slightly. Then, his body flew up and disappeared from everyone's sight. In the immortal realm, in the sky above, there were continuous rumbling sounds. The sound of heavenly music filled the entire sky. Almost everyone could hear it. When Fengjiu saw that Mose had successfully ascended, her face was full of smiles. She waved her hand to remove the mirror in the sky. When she turned around, Du Fan and the others saluted her. Congratulations, Master. Yama Lord has successfully ascended. The day of your family's reunion is just around the corner. Fengjiu smiled and exclaimed, That's right. This day has finally come. It really wasn't easy. I'll immediately send a message to my father and the others and have them set off immediately. Songmi said happily, then turned and ran off. Master, we'll also go and make some preparations. Leng Hua and Du Fan said, then turned and left. After Yama Lord ascended, they would be very busy. Apart from the celebratory banquet, they also had to make arrangements for external affairs. But all in all, Yama Lord's ascension was great news. Master had waited so long for this day, and it had finally come. They were happy from the bottom of their hearts. From this moment on, their master and the Yama Lord would no longer be separated. They could be together forever. He. Hui Lang stood there and laughed foolishly. He was so happy that he laughed like a fool. Yi glanced at him with disgust, but the corners of his lips couldn't help but raise. Their master had finally ascended. It was indeed a great thing. What were they going to do next? After thinking for a while, he said, Madam, let's go down and make some preparations. As he spoke, he pulled the giggling Hui Lang and quickly caught up with Du Fan and the others. Since their master had ascended, they had to be prepared to welcome him. Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh as he watched them leave. At this moment, he was filled with indescribable joy and anticipation. She had been waiting for this day for a long time. She was happy not only because of Mo's successful ascension, but also because they were one step closer to the life they wanted to live. She raised her head to look at the sky and listen to the heavenly music. She couldn't help but smile again. Meanwhile, at Cloud Sky Mountain, Emperor Qing brushed away the mirror in the void. He wanted to tell them about the good news of their father's ascension, but he stopped after thinking about it. Forget it, there was no rush. If he told them now, they probably wouldn't be able to calm down and cultivate. Chapter 51-59. Now that the couple had successfully ascended and become great emperors in the upper immortal realm, no matter who it was in the future, they would only befriend them and not be enemies. The safety of the three children that they had been worried about was probably no longer an issue. Then, if they came to Cloud Sky Mountain, would they take the three children back? Thinking of this, his brows knitted together. His deep and calm eyes glanced in the direction of the cave residence of the three children, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. It was not impossible to take the two boys back, but he had doted on Xiaoqi for several years and watched her grow up. If he took her back, wouldn't it be too much? Those two boys were like a taciturn gourd, with a taut face every day and not much talk on normal days. He estimated that if they did not appear in front of him for 10 days or half a month, he would not think of them. But Xiaoqi, that girl, was mischievous and mischievous. The years in this mountain were quiet, and it was because of her that there was a trace of liveliness. If she was taken away, then wouldn't his place return to its previous lifeless state? The more he thought, the tighter his brows knitted together. However, what he did not know at this time was that not only because Xianyuan Mose had ascended and would soon come here to take the three children back for a reunion, but at this time, Xiao Junyan, who had met you, a few years ago, had also stepped on the road to look for you, At the same time, in the Xiao family's immortal island, Roaring Sky Emperor was sitting in the main hall, looking at the people of the Xiao family sitting on the left and right sides of the hall. After looking around, his brows furrowed and he asked, "Where is Xiao Junyan?" Xiao Junyan, the most outstanding child of the Xiao family's direct line of descent, was also the Xiao family's key successor, but at this time, he was not in the main hall. Hearing this, the Xiao family head was startled for a moment, and then he said, "Old ancestor, he left the island a few days ago and is not on the island now. I wonder if old ancestor is looking for him for something important." He felt strange in his heart. Why would the old ancestor, who had not asked about the affairs of the family for a long time, ask about him? Left the island? Where did he go? Roaring Sky Emperor asked. It's like this, a few years ago, the disciple of Emperor Qin came here by accident and spent some time with Jun Yan. The two children got along quite well. Later, Emperor Qing's disciple was sent away and Jun Yan also cultivated in seclusion for a few years. A few days ago, Emperor Qing's disciple, said Jun Yan came out of seclusion and said that he would go out to travel and see that little girl. I thought it was not a big deal, so I agreed. Xiao family head said cautiously. He had a feeling that something was about to happen. Emperor Qing's disciple. The great Emperor Howling Sky recalled that there was indeed such an incident a few years ago. However, he had forgotten about it in the blink of an eye. He did not expect to be brought up again after a few years. Yes, it's that little girl called Cloud 7. Patriarch Xiao said World Emperor is. Chapter 5160. Yes. Everyone replied respectfully in unison and listened to the ancestors' instructions for a while. Alright, you may leave first. The Roaring Sky Emperor waved his hand and motioned for them to leave first. Thus, after everyone agreed, they left first. Just as Patriarch Xiao and the other elders were about to leave, they heard his voice again. You may stay. Hearing this, they looked at each other and stopped. They turned to the center of the hall and said, Ancestor, do you have any other orders? Sit down. The Roaring Sky Emperor motioned for them to sit down. They looked at each other and sat down, waiting for him to continue. I want to let Jun Yan marry Fengzhou's daughter. What do you think? He asked and looked at everyone present. All of them were stunned when they heard this, and they hesitated for a moment before one of the elders said, Ancestor, I seem to have never heard of Fengzhou's child. Moreover, even if there is, I presume her child is in the lower immortal dimension, right? How can he marry them across the 9 heavens? What's more, Jun Yan is cold by nature and is rarely interested in people and things. If this marriage is arranged, I'm afraid. Patriarch Xiao also nodded his head and said, Great Elder is right. Although Jun Yan is the most outstanding among the younger generation, he is just like a lone wolf. You say, to suddenly arrange such a marriage for him, I am also worried that it will backfire. He paused and said, All these years, I have seen that he is different to Emperor Qing's disciple, Yun Qi. This time, he left the island for Yun Qi. So, I think that if we want to arrange a marriage for him, we should discuss it with him first. Yes. Old ancestor, I also think that what Master said makes sense. She is the daughter of Empress Fengzhou. If she is really engaged, it is not easy to go back on your word. However, if Jun Yan does not have that intention, then this marriage will have the opposite effect. Another elder also spoke up. Martial Monarch Roaring Sky fell into deep thought upon hearing this. He frowned and said, Let's call him back first. I'll talk to him personally. Yes. They could only respond. Seeing that he had no other orders, they retreated. Patriarch Xiao returned to the main courtyard and saw that his son was also there. He asked, "Why are you here? What's the matter?" As he spoke, he sat down by the stone table in the courtyard. His brows were slightly furrowed, and his face showed that he was deep in thought. "Father, is something the matter?" Xiao Juanheng asked as she sat down beside him. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's question, the Xiao clan lord glanced at him. The son in front of him had an outstanding demeanor and a handsome countenance. If it wasn't for Xiao Junyan, he would definitely be the most outstanding among the younger generation. Thinking of this, he sighed softly and told him everything that had happened in the main hall. In the end, he said, "It's like this. Old ancestor wants to let Jun Yan marry Fengjiu's daughter. When I came back, I had already sent a message to Jun Yan, asking him to make a trip back." As he spoke, he looked at his son beside him and asked, "Junheng, what do you think of this matter?" As he spoke, he stared at his expression, not letting go of a single trace of it. Chapter 51-61. Don't you have any resentment or jealousy in your heart? Patriarch Xiao asked, his gaze falling on his face. Hearing this, Xiao Juanheng was startled for a moment, then asked back with a smile, "Father, do you think I'm that kind of person?" "I know you're not that kind of person, but if it wasn't for Jun Yan, perhaps you would be the young master of the Xiao family. If there were any good things, it would fall on you and not Jun Yan. So I don't know if you still don't have any resentment or jealousy in your heart after seeing this." He sighed softly, his tone deep. "Father, you don't have to worry. I've never thought of comparing myself with Jun Yan. We're all disciples of the Xiao family and grew up together. Although we're cousins, we're closer than real brothers. Jun Yan is very outstanding, I'll only be proud of him, happy for him, and not jealous." He smiled and continued, "And I also know that his father is the patriarch of the Xiao family, so it's natural for him to be the young master of the Xiao family. Actually, I think this is pretty good. At least I'm not the young master of the Xiao family, so the burden on my shoulders won't be so heavy." Hearing this, Patriarch Xiao nodded in relief, patted his shoulder and said, "As expected of my son. Good, very good. It's just that, after hearing what you said, I also feel that the old ancestor's idea isn't very good." He looked at his father and said, "With Jun Yan's personality, I'm afraid he won't like this kind of marriage arranged by the elders of the family. Moreover, I know that he has a good impression of Emperor Qing's disciple, Yun Qi. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the island to look for her after coming out of seclusion. There's also one more thing." Xiao Juanheng's voice paused, looking at his father, slightly hesitant. "Speak, I'm listening." Patriarch Xiao gestured. "It's just that the matter of the engagement is only the old ancestor's one-sided idea. I feel that the Empress and the Phoenix Master might not agree to such a marriage." He spoke out the concerns in his heart. Hearing this, Patriarch Xiao laughed, nodded, looked at him and said, "Juanheng, you've really grown up." "That's right. What you just said is also what I'm thinking. Even if the Patriarch is interested in this marriage, I don't think it will happen." He smiled and shook his head. Thinking that his son could also see this point and could sit down with him to analyze this matter, he was very happy. However, we see that the ancestor is looking forward to this marriage, and no one dares to go against his wishes. For now, let's just do as he says. It's rare for Jun Yan to leave the island. If we call him back now, will he come back? Xiao Juanheng asked. I have already told him. As for whether he will come back or not, it depends on his own plans. I think if he doesn't come back, he will also tell the old ancestor. Patriarch Xiao smiled and said, well, you go back first. Yes. After speaking, Xiao Juanheng stood up and left. On the other side, Xianyuan Mo's ascension, the completion of the fairy island, and the worship of the experts from all over the world gathered in front of the fairy island that was completed with his ascension. They were ready to pay their respects to the great emperor who had just ascended.